Life doesn't come with a handbook, and no one should have to face it alone. That's where Courageous Minds Counseling steps in. Based in the Des Moines Metro, this group practice provides culturally responsive, trauma informed therapy for children, adolescents, adults, couples, and families. Their team of highly trained and compassionate therapists understands that every person's journey is unique, whether through eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing therapy, play therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, mindfulness, or traditional talk therapy. They design treatment plans that meet clients where they are and guide them through where they want to be. From overcoming trauma and anxiety to navigating relationships, transitions, or self-discovery, Courageous Minds Counseling creates a safe space to heal, grow, and thrive. Because healing isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and everyone deserves a chance to be heard, supported, and empowered. Call 515-601-2890 or visit courageousmindscounseling.com to schedule your appointment today. When courageous minds speak, oh, the possibilities. Hello, and welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast, the podcast where we celebrate the voices, stories, and experiences of Black women and community change makers across the state. I'm your host, Emily, and today I'm sitting down with a familiar face to many Central Iowans, award-winning journalist and KCCI Channel 8 news anchor, Jodi Long. Jodi is an Ankeny High School graduate, a proud alum of the University of Northwestern in St. Paul, and a woman whose roots in Iowa run deep. Her career has included reporting on some of the most pivotal stories in our state, including the search of Molly Tibbetts to Iowa's response to the racial reckoning of 2020. Jodi's work has earned her both Emmy nominations and journalism awards, especially for her in-depth stories on human trafficking, eating disorders, and efforts to improve birth outcomes for women of color. Beyond the newsroom, she's a devoted wife, mother of two, and an active community voice who speaks at local events and fundraisers throughout the year. We're talking about her journey in media, what it means to tell stories that matter, and how growing up in Iowa shaped her sense of belonging and purpose. I can't wait for you to hear her insights on representation, resilience, and coming full circle in the very community that raised her. So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to welcome KCCI Channel News 8 news anchor Jodi Long to the show. Jodi, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Emily, for having me. That was such a warm welcome. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. It's in those times where I get to actually put my journalism degree to use. It's
Mhm.
really in these intros. So
Oh, yeah,
I
I forgot that
absolutely
you
love
have a
it.
journalism degree. I forgot about that.
I do, yes, studied media and then went right into insurance because that's the obvious path, right?
Yes, yes.
So I wanted to just kind of start off, and first of all, definitely thank you for being on this podcast, but also thank you for I'm going to give you your flowers right now. Thank you for being someone that little Black girls can see that looks like them on TV, especially in this news anchor position. I didn't have that growing up. So the idea of being a news anchor wasn't something that I thought was attainable. But now, fast forward 20 years later, and I'm seeing you and the other Black news anchors that are on Channel 8 and are on other local networks. It gives me hope that there are girls like myself at that young age of saying, I think I want to be in front of the
Mhm.
camera or even reporting on different stories throughout Central Iowa. Thank you for being that person. So I wanted to kind of jump in real quick and just ask you about just kind of your journey and how, you had said that Iowa raised you, even though you're not technically from Iowa. So can you talk a little bit about what it means to you to be here in Iowa in your current position?
So, what it means for me to be in Iowa in my current position, I mean, when I say that Iowa raised me, I moved here when I was in middle school. And so, like, I was born and partially raised, I guess you could say, in Illinois, South Central Illinois. But I had my formative years in Ankeny, so in the Des Moines Metro. And so, I had just such a great network and a great support and a lot of great access to people in the positions that I was in. My dad has been in radio his entire life. And so when we moved here, my dad was also in radio and had made connections with the folks over at Channel 13, where I used to work for 10 years. And so I remember as a high school student going in for like a job shadow and sitting next to a former news anchor named Patrick Dix. And I sat next to him during the noon show as like a high
Mhm.
school student. And
Mhm.
so I knew that by those interactions, by asking them how they got there, that I could have those same aspirations. And so I guess what it means for me to be a news anchor essentially in my hometown is a lot of pride. And I take a lot of stake in that these aren't just viewers. These are my former teachers, my former coaches, friends, colleagues, parents, and other people that I've known since I was a young person. And so to me, it's pride. And that's what I value the most.
A lot of people don't really understand that when you're from this community, it stays with you no matter what, right?
Hmm.
So, I moved away from Iowa for 9 years, and I still spoke about Des Moines and about my community as if I had never left.
Yeah.
So, coming
It has,
back
yeah,
even. Yeah,
it just has a way of like kind of
yeah.
tightening its grip on you for sure.
Exactly, exactly, and then when you come back, it almost feels like you never left in a way.
Hmm.
So I definitely understand, that sentiment of having that pride.
Hmm.
So I wanna ask how you've navigated this media and broadcasting space. How has your identity as a Black woman influenced the way that you navigate the different Iowa communities and the spaces? Because granted, yes, you are definitely doing a lot of reporting here in the metro, in the Des Moines metro area here in central Iowa, but sometimes your reporting is having to take you to other places in the state. So how has your identity kind of influenced how you're navigating those spaces as a Black woman?
Well, I think it's important to know my background and how I was raised. I'm adopted. Both my brother and I are adopted by white parents. And so I was adopted from Chicago when I was a few hours old. My
Mm,
brother was adopted from Seoul, Korea when he was about 4 months old.
mhm,
So prior to living in Iowa, we lived in a very rural community in South Central Illinois that was predominantly white. My family is predominantly white. And living in Ankeny was predominantly white. In
yes.
fact, I was like, I think the second African American homecoming queen when I was crowned that, back in 2008 or nine.
Wow,
And
okay.
so, like, I don't have a worldview lens of being, I guess, I've always been different or I haven't always fit in, but it was never something that I viewed as a negative.
Mhm,
My parents always instilled in me that you are who you are. Your identity is not rooted in skin color, it's rooted in Christ. And
mhm,
so I have never honestly had any issues for
mm,
real. And like that sounds
mhm,
crazy. And I often get approached if I'm speaking at a community event or if I'm speaking to a predominantly minority crowd or diverse crowd, like share with us your struggle of being a Black woman in Iowa. And Emily, I can't say that that is my experience.
mhm,
I can I can thankfully say that I've been so embraced in every nook and cranny community in Iowa.
mhm,
And let me tell you, when you get outside Des Moines city limits, Iowa, like the image that you have of Iowa,
mhm.
you know, it's like
Yes.
that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm,
so I think how I carry myself because of how I was raised, to me, going into areas where I am the only, it doesn't really impact me and it hasn't impacted me. I really pride myself on having integrity and I pride myself on making sure that I listen and bring their voice to the table because at the end of the day, it's not really about me. And I guess to get even kind of deeper in that, not going out into the community, but just navigating the newsroom as a Black person, again, one of I think four, which is very diverse
yes.
in the Des Moines metro market. It's really important as a Black woman in that space, even because diversity of thought is huge. When we approach certain stories, I can be that one to be like, pause. What do you mean their lives didn't matter? What
Mm,
do you I mean, I recently had, in the past 6 months where there basically was like a gun brawl somewhere like down on Court Avenue in the entertainment district.
mhm,
And the suspects were victims, the victims were suspects, right? And so we kind of rolled past that story. But I'm
mhm.
like, the victim's family describe him as a proud father, a
Yeah.
proud son, rightfully employed. Like he had a future. He just found himself in a spot in a moment that cost him his life. We need to talk to them. And it got some pushback. And so I think being able to like raise my hand in those moments to say, can we pause and think about how we're covering this? Are we only talking to the Black voices in our newscast when it relates to crime?
Mm, yeah.
No. And so I really, honestly, Emily, navigating the newsroom
Mhm.
can be more of a challenge than
Yeah.
navigating the community as a Black woman.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so interesting. It's kind of like it's an idea in your head, but until someone actually says it, then you're just like, actually, that makes sense. But I want to go back real quick to you saying that you haven't had too many, if any, negative experiences.
Hmm.
But I think it's so important that, granted, you haven't had many negative experiences personally, but you understand that your personal experience isn't everyone else's,
Right.
and why it's still important to be mindful of how reporting is happening. I mean, we see it all the time, right?
Hmm.
There's a mass shooting. It is a cisgendered heterosexual white man, and they're a lone wolf, right? But if like what you said, we're talking about a situation where there was gun violence, and we're only talking about the victim as the perpetrator and not understanding that this was a person. And I think that's so important, because it could be easy to gloss over those things,
Hmm.
but for you to continuously want to tell those short stories and share those perspectives and make other people think about them, I think is so critical in media, especially right now.
Yeah, absolutely. My experience is my experience, but I can say that that doesn't even that's not the same across other people of color
Mhm.
in our newsroom. And then of course also how we represent people and the way that we tell stories. It's just always important to be so mindful
Mhm.
because I think if we don't, then we're doing everybody a disservice for sure.
Right, right. I definitely agree. So I want to kind of take it back a little bit here, and before I kind of get into like your journalism career now, I want to understand a little bit about what sparked your interest outside of your dad working in radio and you sitting. And I remember Patrick Dix too. So
Yeah.
that is a very familiar name.
Yeah, throwback,
But
right?
yeah, I know, right? But could you talk a little bit about kind of like what sparked your interest to say, I want to study media, I want to study journalism, and I, essentially at some point want to be an anchor?
I never wanted to be an anchor. I just wanted to tell stories.
Mm,
And really it really came from, I guess, my upbringing. Once again, my dad being in radio, my mom worked for my dad at the radio station, my brother is in radio. And so my dad's also a pastor. And
mm,
so when I was a kid, we would often host missionaries. We would
mhm,
visit other churches. I'm so thankful for being raised in the 90s, like when
mm.
tablets weren't a thing.
Yeah.
And I was forced to sit and listen to people, color at those on those coloring sheets at restaurants with the 4 crayons. But like I got to hear people tell their stories from around the world, different
Mhm,
experiences from across the country. And my dad and mom are great orators. And so I thought really that I wanted to be in radio because that was what was around me the most. So when I went to college, my degree was in electronic media and communications. That
mhm.
was radio, TV, and film. And so I liked radio, but I was kind of like, man, I'm just sitting behind this mic all day. Like
Yeah.
nobody can see me. Like I think I'm cute. So maybe I should like go the TV route. And I always admired like Deborah Norville
Yeah. Inside Edition?
with Inside Edition.
Yeah.
Katie Couric was like my idol growing
Uh-huh.
up. And so I was like, maybe I want to do that. And I remember like the first news stories that really stuck with me.
Mhm.
That'd be like Elizabeth Smart when she was abducted from her
Yeah.
bedroom.
Yep.
Columbine, I remember really, really well.
Yeah.
And I remember Princess Diana crashing in the funeral. I remember so those are like the three things I remember the most.
Mhm.
So I thought I just wanted to do that. I just wanted to tell stories. And so that's kind of where I started. But I would say if I did not follow journalism, I would be a funeral home director and study mortuary science or a
Okay.
detective.
You know, I love the range that we
Yeah.
have here because I feel like with the detective, you're trying to tell the story of a crime that was committed.
Mhm.
And then I feel like with a funeral director, you want to tell the story of someone's life and celebrate it.
And it's the compassion.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. And I mean, I think that when you are rooted in stories, I think, and you're wanting to share stories, I honestly think that a lot of the times that aligns with how you tell your own, which
Mm,
is something that with this podcast, I'm starting to more and more realize because ultimately I'm a very nosy person. I think when I met you last semester at
yeah,
North, I just
yeah,
started pelting you with questions.
true,
And
you
I'm,
did.
yeah. And I do that all the time. And I always have to tell people, please forgive me. I automatically find you fascinating, and I just wanna know. Like, last night, I went to the black and gold ball.
Oh, yeah, I loved your dress.
Thank you. Oh my god. I felt like I looked like a giant grape.
No, no.
And, yeah, I had so much fun in that dress. But I met this lady, and she is a black dentist here in Des Moines.
Was it Dr.
And
Haley Harvey?
no, it was,
Lauren
Lauren.
Patrick.
Yes,
My
yes.
girl,
I met
my girl.
her. And my friend, Dr. Wanaki Carr, who I grew up with, because she's
Love
an
her.
OBGYN here,
Yes, the
she
one and
had
only.
told me, "Emily, you need to meet Dr. Lauren." And so I finally met her, and next thing I know, 2 seconds in, "Oh my god, so tell me about your practice. Where did you go to school? Oh my god, you guys are from Chicago? Very cool. And, oh my god, will you be on my podcast?" And I literally, like, shoved my card in her face, and she's like, "Absolutely." That's just kinda how I am, but what I'm learning in this podcast is, as I am storytelling and letting other people tell their stories, I'm starting to realize there's more of my story even that I need to tell,
Mm.
because my friend was standing next to me and she said, "Emily, what if someone came up and pelted questions, like, at you like that?" I'd probably freeze, but at the same time, maybe this podcast, is really helping me figure all of that out. So yeah, I think that that's fantastic. So as we kind of look into where you are now, you had just mentioned, those impactful stories of when you were growing up. So Elizabeth Smart, Columbine. I was just talking to a friend about Princess Diana and how I watched that whole funeral from start to finish. Like, I was just so enamored in that story. There are so many impactful stories that you've covered. What are some that in your career have you covered and that have stayed with you, and why?
My answer here probably will shock you a little bit because it wasn't some story that made, super huge headlines. It wasn't some story that had wide community impact. We call that viewer value. It didn't have super wide viewer value, but it was a story that I covered, gosh, maybe 9 years ago, 10 years ago at this point, about a little boy named Timothy Jenks. He was 12. He and his twin sister, Olivia, were training for a triathlon in Ames. They were cycling, and Timothy got hit by a car and died.
Mm, mm,
And his sister, Olivia, and the other athletes that they were riding with and training with all survived. And so at that time, I was what's called a multimedia journalist, an MMJ, a one
mhm,
man band. I was the reporter, the photographer, the editor,
mhm,
all in one.
mhm,
So this like happened on a weekend, I believe. Maybe the accident was on Friday and I was assigned to the story on Saturday. So I went up to Ames, found out where this family lived, and knocked on their door and was like, "Hi, sorry to bother you. I know that your son passed, and I'm really sorry to hear that, but would you like to like tell me about him?" And of course, you can imagine that didn't it's like we're literally in like
yeah,
the depths of our grief.
right.
And I sat on this family's front porch outside their home and talked with them for almost an hour without a camera before they invited me inside and agreed to let me do a little story. So I said, "Hey, keep in touch. I'm really sorry this happened to you, but thank you for telling me about Timothy." So a couple weeks later, I circled back, or maybe they reached back out to me, but they're like, "Olivia is competing in the triathlon she was training for when TJ died. You can come, but you can't talk to us. You can be there." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Okay, all right. How are we going to do a story without talking to the people that the story's about?" So we did the story and it won an award. We never interviewed them at all. We just put a microphone on their older brother who was cheering like heck for his sister. Well, anyway, long story short, she goes on to like win the triathlon and
Mhm.
she like
Yeah.
competes at nationals anyway. So she's 12. So I still had never talked to the twin sister.
Mhm.
Had only talked, really to the mom and the dad and the brother, the older
Mhm.
brother. So she was 12. She was in middle school at that time. We kept in touch with this family for years. I still do.
Wow.
Um, and when she was a senior and she was graduating to go run at Arizona State University, I sat down and talked to her for the first time.
Mm.
And then the story was only about her and what
Mhm.
it's been like with, life without her twin. And the impact of that and the influence of the story to me was trust and the building relationship over time. Because
Mhm.
each story, we got a little bit more intimate, a little bit more personal. And like that to me is like what it's about because people are never just a story. Like, it's just not like I can never go into work and think like it's a one off. This is just what I'm going to do and I'm going to forget about it and keep moving on. There certainly are those days where the story just is what it is. But there's a lot of times when you can make a lasting impact on people and people will remember the way that you treated them in their
Yeah.
most vulnerable moments. We don't really interview ordinary people. It's either like the highest of highs, the lowest of lows, the mundane,
Mhm.
does not lead a newscast. It just doesn't. So the fact that I maintained this friendship with this girl who in her family, she's now an optometrist.
Wow.
She like
Okay.
graduated, went on and got her doctorate, and
Yeah.
she's a whole person now. And so to me, that was like one of my most impactful stories that I've
Mhm.
told.
Mhm.
Other stories that have stayed with me and that have changed me or really as I've matured as a person, most recently was the Perry school shooting.
Mm.
My
Yeah.
son starts kindergarten in the fall, and
Mhm.
so we're already kind of thinking about life in school, and
Mhm.
we grew up in the era of school shootings.
Yeah.
And so for that to happen in Perry, I was there like moments after it happened to, you know, the end of the day. So for that reason right there, it's like you can only imagine like as a parent or somebody who loves a school-age child, like it was horrific for that to happen so close to home. So we were there from the moment it happened, the entire day. We did a live newscast out there from outside the high school, and then we went back the next day and did it all over again. So that was just like that happened really close to home. The other thing that had an impact on me because it was awful. So I don't even remember what year this was. Whatever year the Cubs won the World Series.
16.
16. You must be a Cubs fan.
I am not.
Okay. Okay, that's even crazier. That
I'm a sports fan, and man, as soon as they won, I was like, "Oh, great, they're gonna be obnoxious. Turn
yeah,
it off."
so in 2016, there were two officers shot and ambushed and shot and killed in their cars. And so I was called in the middle of the night into work. And I'll never forget Emily. It was pouring down rain.
Mhm.
It's early November,
Mhm.
and I'm driving in my own personal car to the scene of the officer Baminio, who was parked in front of the childhood church that I attended. So I knew that
Mm.
neighborhood well.
Mhm.
And it was the middle of the night. Middle of the night. It was awful. And so again, reporting wall to wall coverage. That's what we call just like you report. There's no commercials and
Yeah.
you're on for hours at a time. And that was the case that night. And then when sun rose, I will never forget the way that his squad car looked
Mhm.
because the suspect fired into his squad car hundreds of times at very, very close range.
Mhm.
And his squad car looked like Swiss cheese.
Mm.
And we had been reporting on it, but then to see it so close, because we were very close to the scene, it was like, oh my gosh, this is horrendous. And then you just have this like out of body experience as a reporter because you're still human and you're just like, my gosh. The other scary part was this guy was still on the run.
Yeah.
We didn't know where he was yet.
Right.
And so that day never ended. Like we went to, the police station for a live press conference. We went down to Simpson because he graduated from there. And I remember at the end of the day, I was driving home and I was like, I can't breathe. Like my
Mm.
chest is tight. And I pulled over on the side of the road and I texted my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time. And I was like, I can't breathe. Like, I think you're going to have to come get me. Like, I
Mhm.
can't settle down. And I was hysterical.
Mhm.
And I managed to get to his apartment and like collapsed. And that like was the story that literally broke my anxiety threshold. Like my doctor
Mm.
was like, you had an anxiety attack. And I was like, I've never had one of those before. And I'm not an anxious person. They're like, but everybody has a threshold. And for some people it's really high. And for some people it's low. And like, but there's a point that it's reached. And so that was that point for me. And it got worse before it got better.
Yeah.
But we're good.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I want to ask about I feel like in the last 10, 15 years, I feel like journalism, true journalism has it's it's weird because in a way it's been under attack, but then again, in a way it's also been sensationalized. With how it's reported, I feel like there are good journalists out there that are trying to get the story to inform people and to let them know of what's going on in the world. But then there's that other that it's almost like shock value. And you're getting these quips and these questions that are incredibly out of pocket and don't necessarily need to be asked. But talking with you, it really sounds like there are two or three things that are really important in your reporting. First of all, is to have empathy, to speak with integrity, and then to also have compassion about the people that you are reporting about. Why are those things important to you as you're telling these stories?
It's a really good question. Thank you for asking that. I just think it's important because that's the crux of how we should be in communication and contact with other people. It's decency and it's respectful because nobody wants their words to be taken out of context. And we're asking people difficult questions and needing them to be transparent. And the only way to do that is to have like respect and integrity to do so. And I think when you ask the hard questions and you follow up with a question if it needs to happen, actually build your respect as a journalist and it builds a rapport. And that's how people then trust you because they know that you're going to be nice to them, but you're going to hit them with a question.
Right.
And so I think that's especially why local journalism matters because we have the space and the time to do that.
It always makes me think about how at this point right now, it's kind of easy to, launch a podcast and have a microphone and talk, right? I know for myself, I'm not going to sit here and call myself a journalist even though I studied it. But what I am going to say is that the things that I want to talk about are I want to make sure that there's a purpose behind them. And the last thing I want to do is talk about things or people that behind the curtain, we don't really know what they're going through. You know what I mean? So that's why like I don't really like to do like a lot of like celebrity talk and things like that on my podcast because you can find so many different podcasts, so many different TV shows and YouTube channels and things like that to talk about those things. But I also do feel like in a way, sometimes that commentary can take away from how stories are told in a way. And that that's just like my personal opinion, but that's why I always look to local news. I always look to, the NBCs, the MSNBCs, the CNNs, and even the Fox Newses, believe it or not, to have that piece of integrity and compassion, even if I don't expect it. I feel like with the way journalism and broadcast media is now, there's something always to learn, whether it be negative or positive in a way. So, speaking on compassion, though, and empathy and integrity, your career, you oftentimes are speaking about a lot of complex issues around race, around mental health, around women's health. Um, how are you approaching those stories, and what impact do you want those stories to have, not only on this local community, but also the far reaches of central Iowa?
That's also an interesting question, but it's not ever really about me, like, and how it's not my narrative. It's
Mhm,
not our narrative as a station. So oftentimes, like in my position as an anchor, I get extra time to do my story as a reporter because
mhm,
I'm not turning stories every day.
mhm,
So I get a chance to kind of cast a wide net to talk to people who I think could be a good voice for the story. And their experience will then help me shape the other interviews that I also need to include in the story. So it's always helpful if there is a person of color in the story because if it's impacting them, it's impacting everybody. But again, it's also hard to sometimes find
mhm,
people like that in Iowa that feel comfortable speaking to it.
mhm,
There's a whole bunch of variables. It's kind of a difficult story to answer without going into the nuances of what it takes to put a story together
mhm.
in a
Yeah,
certain
and
amount of
I
time.
yeah, everyone has their reasons to not want to speak to media or speak to their experience because just like what you said, people don't necessarily want their stories to be misconstrued.
When a
I
lot of
guess
people don't feel like they don't want it to be misconstrued, they don't find like their story is interesting enough. I feel like for a lot of people, they don't think that anything they have to say is interesting or has any value, like myself included. So it's like you have to convince half of our job is just convincing. It's like sales. We're just like convincing people all the time to talk and not in like a corrupt way, but it's like I can't tell your story unless you're going to talk to me. We're not newspaper. You have to show your face. You have to say your name unless there is something like you could get killed for doing this interview, which is rare. But
yeah.
like there are some times where we have to like do that. But there's a lot of convincing and there's a lot of explaining like your voice will be paired with somebody else who can like validate your your concern, your lived experience, your issue,
Mhm,
and then of course finding all sides to that. So yeah, it can be a lot, but I think as a whole, media, has people's trust in it has decreased. But I think local media, like I still feel like there are glimmers of hope. And
yes.
like there are people who say like, "Oh, I don't watch any local media at all. I don't trust it." And it's like, "Okay, cool. Good for you." But also don't be so ignorant because you're not informed either.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, if I had to choose between watching CNN versus watching my local media to get stories that are direct to me and then those national stories and how they impact me, I'm
Mhm.
gonna go with local media myself. But, everyone's definitely different. So as we wrap up here, I do, kind of like what I said in the beginning, I wish there would have been a Black anchor, someone that I could have really looked up to as I was super young and growing up. I do know that Channel 8 and there have been Black anchors kind of like as I got to like high school and up, but when I was super, super little, it would have been nice to see. But, thinking back to a young Jodi and her passion for telling stories and being rooted in all of those great things, if there are young Black girls that are listening to this and they want to pursue a career in journalism, what are some things that you wish you would have known back then? And what pieces of advice would you have for those young women that are looking to pursue that career in a field that isn't always representative of what they look like?
So, my advice to young girls would be to just have a really hard work ethic. Nothing will be handed to you, especially in journalism. It's like an individual sport in terms of a lot of it. You have to be able to do it yourself. Curiosity is the best thing. And so, as long as you stay curious, that can get you into the business and it can help keep you in the business for a long time. Mentorship is also huge as well. I think whether you can, latch on to an anchor who looks like you, or honestly, an anchor who is just really good at what
Mm,
they do,
yeah.
that's just as important. I've never joined the National Association of Black Journalists. I know that it's a great organization, but I just feel like I've been able to be fine without
Mhm,
it. So find where you fit in, find a
mhm,
group that could look like something different for everybody. But having that network is really fantastic to help get you into the career and help you kind of leapfrog from one thing to the next. The TV industry is really, really small. And so it's like 3 degrees of separation. All of us know everyone somehow, some way. And so, be kind, be considerate, be respectful. It sounds simple, but like it goes a long way. Also, another piece of advice to young people getting in. I know that it seems like the kids these days want that fame, that recognition, the social media followers, the
right.
influence that way. It's really cool to be on TV, but also you don't do this job to be on TV. Like you do this job because you care about your community, you care about reporting the truth and finding answers to questions that exist in the community. But I'd also say that this really hasn't come crystal clear to me until honestly now in my 12th year of being a journalist is, slay in your lane essentially. There are lots and lots of different types of journalists with different strengths. I've never gotten that coveted Emmy. I've been awarded it. I've been nominated for it, but I've
Mhm,
never been awarded it. And I may not be the strongest journalist in
mhm,
my newsroom, but I have a lot of impact in my community. And that's what's meaningful to
mhm,
me at the end of the day. I
mhm,
don't care to anchor the 10 o'clock newscast, the primetime spot. That's not for me.
mhm.
And so kind of realizing what you want your impact to be, and that evolves maybe over time, but just keeping a level head in this industry is really important.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and I definitely think that that is all incredible information and advice, especially kids these days just wanna do it for the views, right? And it's so much more than that. It's definitely so much more than that. So, as we kind of wrap up then, my last question is, Jodi, we see you all over town, whether you're speaking at a school or you are doing hosting at an event, or I think you just rang in the farmer's market yesterday, right? Yeah, so we see you all over the place. If you were to give this current season of your life, of your career, one word, what would it be and why?
Okay. Maybe current one word for my current season. Balance, maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Balancing a lot with being a present wife and mother to my 2 kids, but also being really impactful at work.
Mhm.
So balance.
Balance.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And I like to ask that question because that was something I really had to ask myself at the beginning of the year for everything that I've kind of been through these last 3 years with the divorce and grad school and all these other things. And my word is restore. I'm currently in a restorative season of my life because I'm starting to restore my own independence and my identity. So that's why I always like to ask that questions as I see people doing different moves and doing different things. Jodi, I truly appreciate you being on the show today. And one thing I always like to do is just roll out the red carpet to my guests and making sure that people know where to find you on social media, how to follow you, and also how to support you.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Jodi Long, KCCI on Facebook, and Jodi_Long on Instagram. I post my stories and just kind of behind the scenes looks on both of those accounts. Ways to support me. Of course, you can always comment and like my stuff, but also be the eyes and ears for me wherever you're at and let me know what's happening where you are, whether it's big or small, whether it's something you heard at the water cooler or something that's happening at your child's school or in your church, etc. Let me know, and I would love to be connected with you and potentially turn out some really great stories.
Awesome. Awesome. Jodi, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your story with such heart and honesty. Your journey is a powerful example of what it looks like to grow, give back, and also to lead with purpose. And I know that my listeners are going to walk away very inspired. To everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Black Girl Iowa podcast. This and all previous episodes of the podcast are currently available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Pandora Radio, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Be sure to follow along on Instagram and TikTok at Black Girl Iowa for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and more. And also, don't forget to check out my website and the blog, www.blackgirliowa.com, for deeper stories, reflections, and community features. And if you want to rep the brand, support the mission, and look good doing it, head over to my Etsy shop, Black Girl Iowa Shop, for merch. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. And as always, keep showing up, keep telling your story, and keep being unapologetically you. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you took a moment just for yourself? Not for work, not for school, not for family, but for you. That's where journaling comes in. And that's exactly why I created my journaling kits. Each kit is designed to make it super easy and honestly, really fun to start your journaling journey. You'll get a decorated journal with over 100 prompts to spark your creativity, plus washi tape, stickers, cards, and even a sweet treat to keep you inspired. Journaling is more than just writing. It's self-care, it's reflection, it's dreaming bigger. And with these kits, you don't have to stare at a blank page wondering where to start. I've got you covered with prompts that will help you reflect, plan, and grow. They're just $18, and you can grab yours today on Etsy in the Black Girl Iowa shop. Don't wait to start your journaling journey. Your thoughts, your dreams, your story, they deserve a page.